In the 9th century, England was on the verge of complete annihilation under the onslaught of formidable conquerors from the north. King Alfred of Wessex was left without an army and was forced to wage a covert war against the superior forces of the Viking leader Guthrum. It was under these harsh conditions that a strategy was forged that would forever change the political map of Europe. By the beginning of 878, the situation for the Anglo-Saxons had become absolutely critical and almost hopeless. A huge Viking army led by the experienced strategist Guthrum systematically captured the territories of the independent states of Britain. Northumbria, Mercia, and East Anglia were already under the complete control of the conquerors, having lost their independence. Wessex remained the last stronghold of resistance, but even its defenses were cracking under constant pressure. A sudden winter breakthrough by the Vikings destroyed the last lines of defense and forced the ruler to seek refuge in flight. The invaders acted swiftly, leaving the defenders no time to organize a full-fledged counterattack or regroup their forces. Guthrum skillfully used the element of surprise, striking at the most unexpected moments and disrupting the usual course of events. His troops moved quickly across the territory of Wessex, occupying key settlements and strategically important points. The local population was demoralized by the speed of the enemy's advance and was unable to offer organized resistance. The kingdom's defenses were completely disorganized, and centralized control effectively ceased to exist in its previous form. The conquerors established their own order in the captured lands, depriving the Anglo-Saxons of access to resources and food. King Alfred found himself in a situation where traditional methods of warfare no longer worked. It became impossible to assemble a large militia due to the loss of control over most of the territory of Wessex. The ruler had to make unconventional decisions to preserve the core of his state and prepare for further action. He abandoned the idea of open frontal confrontation, realizing the overwhelming numerical superiority of the enemy. Alfred made the difficult decision to leave his residence and retreat to areas inaccessible to the enemy. It was a tactical maneuver aimed at preserving his leadership and creating a new base for resistance. Many of the ruler's associates were forced to leave the country, fleeing from the advancing enemy forces across the sea. Those who remained loyal to Alfred formed a small but extremely close-knit group of like-minded people. They understood that open confrontation at that moment would lead to final defeat and the loss of the kingdom. These people became the foundation for future revival, remaining loyal to their leader in the darkest of times. Their main task was to survive and move unnoticed through the occupied territory of Wessex. Secrecy became their main tool in the fight against a powerful and numerous enemy. Secrecy was elevated to an absolute, and only the most trusted individuals knew the king's whereabouts. Any leak of information could lead to the immediate discovery and capture of the ruler by Guthrum's forces. Alfred's detachment moved exclusively in small groups using convoluted routes and hidden trails. They avoided large settlements and open spaces, preferring to operate under the cover of thick fog. This tactic allowed them to remain undetected for several critical months. Stealth became their main shield against the ubiquitous patrols of the conquerors. The situation seemed desperate, but it was under these conditions that a new plan of action began to take shape. Alfred analyzed the mistakes of the past and looked for weaknesses in the strategy of his formidable opponent. He understood that Guthrum relied on control of key points, but could not control every inch of land. This vulnerability gave the Anglo-Saxons a chance to organize an effective asymmetric counterattack. The ruler of Wessex began to develop a concept of covert strikes against supply lines and small Viking garrisons. This strategy required patience, discipline, and perfect knowledge of the terrain. Every day in exile was used to prepare for the future decisive clash with the enemy. The king's supporters trained in covert movement and coordination of actions in difficult terrain. They established secret contacts with the loyal population, gathering information about the movements of enemy troops. This network of agents became Alfred's eyes and ears in the occupied territory of Wessex. Information became as important a resource as weapons or food. Gradually, scattered resistance groups began to unite around their invisible leader. King Alfred chose the island of Athelney, located in the middle of the impassable Somerset marshes, as his refuge. This area was a vast network of ponds, swamps, and thick reeds. For heavily armed Viking troops, this landscape was completely unsuitable for maneuvering or siege. Thick fog often hid the island from prying eyes, making it an ideal location for a secret base. Nature itself had created an impregnable fortress, which the Anglo-Saxons only slightly reinforced. Athelney could only be reached by narrow paths known only to locals. Any careless step could lead to sinking into a sticky quagmire from which it was impossible to escape. The island's defenders set up a system of hidden landmarks that allowed them to move safely through the marshes. The Vikings, accustomed to open spaces and the vastness of the sea, felt extremely uncertain here. They avoided going deep into the marshes, fearing they would lose their bearings and get stuck in the mud. This gave Alfred and his men a sense of relative security and time to plan. A small system of fortifications consisting of earthen ramparts and wooden barriers was erected on the island. These structures were not large, but in combination with the surrounding landscape, they presented a serious obstacle. Construction was carried out in strict secrecy, without the use of noisy tools or attracting unnecessary attention. The materials were sourced locally from the marshes, which meant that no supplies had to be transported in from outside. Alfred personally supervised the construction of this improvised citadel, delving into every detail of the engineering solutions. The camp became a symbol of the steadfastness and unyielding will of the ruler of Wessex. Life in Athelney required tremendous endurance and constant adaptation to harsh conditions from the Anglo-Saxons. They had to make do with minimal food supplies and live in constant fear of being discovered. However, it was precisely this ascetic environment that tempered the warriors' character and united them around a common goal. Hardship became a unifying factor, blurring the boundaries between noble thanes and ordinary militiamen. They all became equal in the face of harsh nature and a common, formidable enemy. Discipline in the camp was maintained at the highest level as the survival of the entire group depended on it. From this secure shelter, Alfred began to coordinate the actions of scattered resistance units throughout Wessex. Messengers secretly left the island, delivering the king's orders and gathering intelligence. This communication system was slow but extremely reliable and completely invisible to the enemy. Guthrum had no idea that a fully fledged command center was operating in the heart of the occupied territory. The Anglo-Saxons gradually restored the broken links between the various regions of their kingdom. Athelney became the brain center of the future large-scale confrontation. Alfred's troops periodically made forays from the marshes, attacking small Viking patrols and foragers. These actions took the form of swift raids, after which the Anglo-Saxons instantly disappeared into the fog. The enemy could not organize a pursuit, as the tracks ended at the edge of an impassable swamp. Such local successes raised the morale of the king's supporters and sowed uncertainty in the ranks of the conquerors. The Vikings began to realize that they did not fully control the situation. An invisible enemy exerted constant psychological pressure on Guthrum's garrisons. In parallel with the sabotage activities, the king was developing a plan for a large-scale counteroffensive. He understood that pinpoint strikes would not lead to the complete liberation of Wessex. It was necessary to gather significant forces for a single decisive strike against Guthrum's main army. Alfred sent secret messages to the leaders of the militia in neighboring counties, calling on them to unite. He appointed the place and time of assembly, strictly observing precautions and secrecy. Preparations for the main battle were carried out in conditions of absolute secrecy. Time was on Alfred's side, allowing him to carefully plan each stage of the future operation. He analyzed the enemy's routes of movement, identifying the most vulnerable points in their defenses. Scouts provided detailed information on the strength and location of the main Viking forces. This painstaking work made it possible to create a detailed picture of the balance of forces in the theater of war. The ruler of Wessex had no room for error, as he had no second chance to assemble an army. Everything depended on the accuracy of the calculations and the flawless execution of the plan. Organizing a large-scale gathering of troops in enemy-controlled territory seemed an impossible task. However, Alfred used a unique warning system based on a network of trusted individuals and secret signals. Messengers traveled under the guise of ordinary travelers, avoiding main roads and large population centers. They passed information by word of mouth, leaving no written confirmation of their orders. This decentralized mobilization system was a true masterpiece of covert organizational planning. The meeting point was designated as Egbert's Stone, a place of great symbolic significance for the Anglo-Saxons. It was an ancient landmark located on the border of several counties, which facilitated the approach of troops from different directions. The location was chosen with the aim of ensuring the secrecy of the large gathering of people. The dense forests around Egbert's Stone reliably concealed the arriving groups of militiamen from enemy observers. The Vikings did not patrol the area thoroughly enough, focusing their attention on more important strategic targets. Alfred once again used his knowledge of his native country's geography against the invaders. The king's call spread through the counties of Somerset, Wiltshire, and Hampshire with astonishing speed. Local leaders began secretly gathering their people, forming small mobile groups. The movement to the assembly point was carried out mainly at night to avoid detection. The people moved in small streams, which would eventually merge into a powerful river of Anglo-Saxon resistance. The militia's motivation was incredibly high as they were fighting to regain their homes. It was truly a people's militia, united by a common goal and faith in their leader. The gathering process required perfect synchronization and strict discipline from all participants in the operation. The troops had to arrive at Egbert's Stone within a very narrow time window. Early arrival threatened to expose the camp and attract the attention of large enemy forces. Being late could disrupt the entire campaign plan and weaken the army before the decisive battle. Alfred established a strict schedule of movement, which was strictly adhered to by the commanders in the field. The precision with which this maneuver was carried out demonstrated the high level of organization of Anglo-Saxon society. For Guthrum, this large-scale process remained completely unnoticed until the very last moment. He was confident of his complete victory and did not expect such organized actions from his defeated enemy. His intelligence failed to detect the movement of thousands of people through the forests and country roads of Wessex. The conquerors were complacent, enjoying the fruits of their previous rapid successes. This overconfidence proved to be a fatal mistake for the experienced leader of the pagan army. The Vikings missed the moment when the initiative finally passed to the king hiding in the marshes. By May 878, an impressive force had gathered at Egbert's Stone. Alfred's men, many of whom hadn't seen their ruler for several months, were inspired by his appearance. The king's meeting with the army raised the morale of the warriors to unprecedented heights. They saw that their leader was unbroken, determined, and had a clear plan of action. This reunion was a turning point in the entire campaign, turning scattered troops into a united force. The army of Wessex was ready to march against Guthrum's forces. Alfred reviewed his troops, assessing their readiness for the upcoming large-scale confrontation. Militiamen formed the core of the army, supported by professional warriors from the king's personal guard. Their weapons varied from simple spears and axes to high-quality swords and sturdy wooden shields. The main advantage of this army was not its equipment, but its high level of cohesion and understanding of its task. Each warrior knew his place in the ranks and obeyed the commands of his leaders without question. The organization of the army was brought to the highest possible level under the circumstances. The command held a series of brief meetings, distributing tasks among the commanders of various units. A clear order of march to the enemy's positions was developed, eliminating confusion and loss of control. Particular attention was paid to maintaining silence and secrecy throughout the army's journey. The Anglo-Saxons planned to strike where the Vikings least expected it. The element of surprise was supposed to compensate for the possible numerical superiority and experience of the enemy forces. Alfred's plan was bold and relied on perfect coordination between all units. The night before the campaign was spent in silence and tense anticipation of the coming historic events. The warriors checked their equipment, adjusted their shields, and prepared themselves mentally for a difficult physical confrontation. No large fires were lit in the camp so as not to attract the attention of random enemy patrols. The atmosphere was filled with determination and the understanding that the fate of the state depended on the outcome of the battle. This was an army that had nowhere to retreat and was ready to go all the way. In the morning, the Anglo-Saxons began their secret advance towards Guthrum's forces. The Anglo-Saxon army began a rapid march towards Guthrum's positions, trying to cover the distance as quickly as possible. They moved in a single dense column, which allowed them to maintain control and respond quickly to changes in the situation. The vanguard of the army consisted of the most experienced scouts who checked the route and removed any obstacles. They moved silently, ensuring the safety of the main forces and preventing any unexpected encounters with patrols. This forced march required tremendous physical endurance from every member of the militia. The Vikings were in the Edington settlement area, feeling completely safe and not expecting an attack. They were located on high ground, which gave them a good view of the surroundings but dulled their vigilance. Guthrum was confident that Alfred was still hiding in the marshes with a handful of his loyal supporters. This overconfidence led the conquerors to neglect proper combat security on the outer approaches. Their camp went about its normal business, unaware of the impending large-scale threat from the Anglo-Saxons. The element of surprise that Alfred had counted on was achieved in full. The appearance of the huge army of Wessex on the horizon came as a complete tactical shock to the Vikings. They saw the orderly ranks of warriors approaching their positions in a purposeful and organized manner. Panic did not grip the experienced Scandinavian fighters, but they had to quickly reorganize from their marching formation into a battle formation. Guthrum began hastily giving orders, trying to form a defensive line and prepare to repel the attack. Time was working against the conquerors as the Anglo-Saxons rapidly closed the distance, not giving the enemy time to recover. The initiative was completely in the hands of King Alfred. The Anglo-Saxons approached in complete silence, which exerted powerful psychological pressure on the enemy. There was no fuss in their ranks, only the measured steps of thousands of men ready to reclaim their lands. This silence was more eloquent than any battle cry, demonstrating the absolute determination and iron discipline of the militia. The Vikings were accustomed to noisy attacks and aggressive demonstrations of force before the start of a battle. The silent, relentless approach of the wall of shields caused them a sense of anxiety and confusion. Alfred used this psychological tactic to demoralize the enemy. The choice of location for the battle at Edington also played an important role in the Anglo-Saxon strategy. The hill on which the Vikings were positioned did not give them a decisive advantage over the dense formation of the attackers. The landscape allowed Alfred's army to deploy its forces across a wide front, avoiding crowding and loss of maneuverability. The Anglo-Saxons skillfully used the terrain to maintain the unity of their formation. The Vikings' position proved vulnerable to massive and coordinated frontal pressure. The strategic planning of the ruler of Wessex once again proved its superiority. Alfred also ordered his men to form a classic shield wall before the decisive charge. The militiamen stood shoulder to shoulder, overlapping each other's shields and creating a monolithic defensive and offensive line. The front row consisted of the most heavily armed and experienced warriors, ready to take the brunt of the attack. Behind them were the support rows, whose task was to maintain constant pressure and replace tired comrades. This formation required incredible coordination and trust in those standing next to you in the ranks. The Anglo-Saxons were ready to demonstrate perfect coordination of joint actions. The distance between the two armies was rapidly closing, and the tension reached its peak. Commanders on both sides gave their final orders, adjusting the formation and aligning the ranks of their units. The silence was replaced by the dull thud of footsteps and the clanking of equipment of thousands of warriors preparing for battle. King Alfred stood at the center of his army, inspiring his men with his personal example and unwavering confidence. His presence in the front ranks gave the militiamen additional strength and confidence in the success of their hopeless endeavor. Guthrum also commanded his fighters from the center of the formation, ready to demonstrate his tactical prowess. The leaders of the two nations stood facing each other, preparing to decide the fate of England in one massive clash. It was the culmination of years of confrontation between Wessex and the pagan army. The enormous energy of the two armies was ready to be unleashed in one powerful burst. A deafening blow marked the beginning of one of the most significant battles in early medieval British history. Two walls of shields collided with incredible force, turning the battlefield into a zone of colossal physical pressure. The front ranks of both armies found themselves pressed tightly against each other, unable to maneuver freely. This confrontation resembled a struggle between two giant mechanisms, where every detail was subjected to extreme stress. The warriors used the mass of their bodies to push through the enemy's formation and force them to retreat. In this clash, collective strength and the ability to hold position were decisive. Alfred brilliantly accomplished this task, timely increasing pressure on the most vulnerable areas. Guthrum, on the contrary, was increasingly forced to react to the enemy's actions, losing control of the situation. The tactical superiority of the Anglo-Saxon command became more and more evident with every minute of the battle. The battle lasted for several hours, turning into a test of human endurance. The soldiers of both armies experienced extreme physical exhaustion from the continuous tension and pressure. Fresh forces from the rear regularly replaced their tired comrades on the front line of the clash. This rotation allowed them to maintain a high pace of attack and did not give the enemy time to catch their breath. The organization of such a change in dense formation testified to the high level of training of the Anglo-Saxon militia. The Vikings, on the other hand, gradually lost the synchrony of their actions due to accumulated fatigue. The formation of the Scandinavian warriors began to lose its cohesion, and dangerous gaps began to appear. The Anglo-Saxons immediately took advantage of this opportunity, increasing the pressure on the weakened sections of the enemy's defense. They wedged themselves into the gaps that had formed, disrupting the integrity of Guthrum's defensive line. It became increasingly difficult for the Vikings to coordinate their actions and maintain a united front. Their famous tactical discipline began to falter under the methodical pressure of the Wessex troops. The turning point in the battle was inexorably approaching, heralding the triumph of King Alfred's strategy. Guthrum tried to restore order among his men, urging them to close their shields and hold the line. However, physical fatigue and powerful pressure got the better of the Scandinavian fighters' experience. They began to retreat slowly, step by step, surrendering their positions under the onslaught of the Anglo-Saxons. This retreat was initially organized, but soon turned into an uncontrolled slide down the hill. The Vikings' formation finally fell apart, and they lost their main advantage in collective defense. Alfred's army continued its relentless advance, consolidating its tactical success. The Anglo-Saxons pursued the retreating enemy, preventing them from regrouping and organizing a new line of defense. They maintained the density of their formation, pushing the remnants of the enemy forces from the battlefield at Edington. Victory in this brutal confrontation went to the Wessex militia thanks to their excellent organization and endurance. Alfred proved that his army was capable of crushing the most formidable force of its time in direct combat. The battle ended in a complete triumph for Anglo-Saxon tactics and a crushing defeat for the pagan army. What large companies hide is nothing compared to the secrets of medieval persecution strategies. After their crushing defeat at Edington, the remnants of Guthrum's army retreated rapidly to the fortified settlement of Chippenham. Alfred did not allow his enemy to relax and immediately organized a close pursuit of the retreating Scandinavian forces. Guthrum understood that prolonged resistance in such conditions was absolutely impossible and would lead to complete exhaustion of his forces. The morale of his warriors was finally broken after a heavy defeat in open combat. Despondency and a sense of hopelessness about their current strategic position reigned in the conqueror's camp. The pagan army had turned into a group of trapped people awaiting their fate. Alfred agreed to listen to Guthrum's proposals, but put forward his own extremely harsh and uncompromising conditions. He demanded not just a temporary truce, but guarantees of long-term security for his kingdom. The ruler of Wessex insisted that the Vikings leave his territory for good and hand over noble hostages. These conditions were dictated by his position of absolute power and understanding of his strategic superiority. Guthrum was forced to agree to all demands, as the alternative was the complete destruction of his troops. Alfred's diplomatic triumph cemented the results of his brilliant military campaign. An agreement was reached, and the siege of Chippenham ended 2 weeks after the Battle of Edington. The Vikings left the fortification, handing over the agreed number of hostages to the Anglo-Saxons as a sign of compliance with the treaty. This moment became a symbol of Wessex's liberation from the threat of complete foreign domination for many years to come. Alfred showed the magnanimity of a victor, allowing the remnants of the enemy army to leave peacefully for designated territories. His decision was dictated by political foresight and a desire to establish a lasting balance of power on the island. Guthrum recognized the political authority of the King of Wessex and pledged not to violate the borders of his possessions. Guthrum, finding himself in a hopeless situation, agreed to this demand, realizing its political significance. The baptism ceremony was to take place in the near future in the presence of the King of Wessex himself. This step marked the beginning of a new era in relations between the Scandinavian settlers and the Anglo-Saxon population. Alfred acted as godfather to his recent sworn enemy, cementing their new status. It was a brilliant diplomatic move that turned a military adversary into a political ally. The Wessex ruler's strategy went far beyond simple military superiority. The siege of Chippenham showed that Alfred was a master not only of battlefield tactics, but also of diplomacy. He managed to extract maximum benefit from his victory, ensuring the security of his kingdom for decades to come. His actions laid the foundation for the future unification of all England under the rule of a single monarch. Wessex went from being a besieged and nearly destroyed state to becoming the dominant political force on the island. The ceremony of the Viking leaders' conversion to the new faith was one of the most symbolic events of the early Middle Ages. The event took place in the village of Ellers, near the marshes of Athelney, where Alfred had once hidden from his pursuers. The choice of location was not accidental. It symbolized the complete cycle from near defeat to absolute triumph for Wessex. Guthrum arrived at the ceremony, accompanied by 30 of his most distinguished and influential comrades. They all underwent the rite of immersion in water, publicly renouncing the faith of their Scandinavian ancestors. Alfred personally witnessed this act, acting as guarantor for the spiritual rebirth of his recent enemy. The adoption of Christianity did not mean an instant change in the mentality of all the Scandinavian settlers on the island. It was more of a political compromise necessary to legitimize Guthrum's authority in the territories allotted to him. However, this step had enormous consequences for the further assimilation of the Vikings into the Anglo-Saxon environment. The church gained the opportunity to extend its influence to lands that had previously been under the control of pagans. Gradually, over generations, Scandinavian customs began to mix with Christian traditions, creating a unique culture. Alfred initiated a process that forever changed the socio-cultural landscape of Britain. Alfred understood that simply establishing borders was not enough. It was necessary to create a system of defense against possible future invasions. He initiated a large-scale program to build fortified settlements, called burghs, throughout Wessex. These fortresses were located in strategically important areas and served as shelters for the population in case of danger. The peaceful settlement also contributed to the recovery of the economy and the development of trade between different regions of Britain. The establishment of clear boundaries and rules of interaction reduced the risks for merchants and craftsmen. Cities began to recover after decades of instability, becoming centers of economic growth. Agriculture also received a boost as peasants were able to work their land without fear. The stability provided by the treaty between Alfred and Guthrum brought prosperity to all parties to this historic agreement. The baptism at Ellers became the starting point for the gradual merging of two different peoples. The Scandinavians and Anglo-Saxons began to adopt useful skills, words, and cultural characteristics from each other. This intermingling contributed to the formation of a more complex and rich society in the British Isles. Despite periodic local conflicts in the future, the vector for integration was set at that very moment. Alfred's policy proved to be incredibly far-sighted, ensuring not only the survival but also the development of his people. The territories transferred to the control of Guthrum and the Scandinavian settlers were given the historical name of Danelaw. This word literally meant the area of Danish law, emphasizing the legal and administrative autonomy of these lands. In this vast territory, covering the eastern and northern parts of England, the laws and customs of the Vikings were in force. The Anglo-Saxon population within the borders of Danelaw was forced to adapt to new social and legal realities. This zone became a kind of state within a state, with its own unique structure and system of government. The formation of Danelaw cemented the division of Britain into two large cultural and political spheres of influence. The five burghs of Lincoln, Nottingham, Derby, Leicester, and Stamford became the administrative center and core of the Danelaw. These cities turned into major commercial and military centers, controlling the surrounding territories and trade routes. Each burgh had its own army and system of government, obeying a common council of Scandinavian leaders. They served as strongholds for the Vikings, ensuring the safety of their settlements and control over the local population. The development of these centers contributed to the urbanization of the region and the strengthening of economic ties with continental Europe. Danelaw quickly became a powerful economic entity on the map of medieval Britain. The Danelaw legal system differed significantly from the traditional Anglo-Saxon laws that applied in Wessex. It was based on Scandinavian traditions of justice, where local assemblies of free men played an important role. These assemblies resolved disputes, established trade rules, and determined punishments for offenses. The influence of Danish law was so strong that some of its elements remained in the English legal system for centuries. Life in Danelaw was governed by pragmatic and harsh rules that reflected the harsh mentality of the northern settlers. Despite political divisions, active trade and cultural ties were maintained between Danelaw and Wessex. Merchants freely crossed the border, exchanging goods, handicrafts, and agricultural products. This economic exchange contributed to the gradual smoothing of cultural differences between the Scandinavians and the Anglo-Saxons. Craft production flourished in the cities of Danelaw, especially metalworking and jewelry making. The mixing of styles led to the emergence of a unique Anglo-Scandinavian art, examples of which are found by archaeologists. Mutually beneficial cooperation proved stronger than past grievances and military conflicts. The influence of Scandinavian culture was also evident in the linguistic sphere, enriching Old English with many new words. Terms related to seafaring, trade, and law were actively borrowed by the Anglo-Saxons from their neighbors. The formation and subsequent dissolution of Danelaw left a deep mark on British history. It determined the administrative division, legal system, and even dialectal features of entire regions of the country. Understanding this historical period is essential to comprehending the complex processes involved in the formation of the English nation. The Battle of Edington was the catalyst for all these momentous changes that altered the fate of the island. The victory at Edington and the subsequent creation of Danelaw became the foundation on which King Alfred's greatness was built. His reign was a turning point, separating the era of fragmented Anglo-Saxon kingdoms from the idea of a united England. Alfred proved that effective governance and strategic planning could overcome even the deepest crisis. He left his descendants not just a preserved state, but a powerful and organized political structure. His reforms in the army, education, and law laid the foundations for Wessex's prosperity in the decades that followed. The legacy of Alfred the Great is still studied today as a classic example of state building. The organization of the burgh system, begun after the peace treaty with Guthrum, was a revolutionary step in the country's defense. This network of fortresses not only protected the population, but also stimulated the economic development of the regions. The burghs became centers of coinage, craft production, and regional trade, strengthening the economy of Wessex. The system of permanent garrisons ensured a rapid response to any threats, making the kingdom safe to live in. Alfred's engineering vision was ahead of its time, creating an effective security infrastructure. These fortifications became the material embodiment of his concern for the future of his people. Alfred's militia reforms radically changed the military potential of the Anglo-Saxon state. He divided the fyrds into two parts, allowing one half to serve while the other engaged in agriculture. This rotational system provided the kingdom with a standing army without compromising the economy or food security. The warriors became more professional and disciplined, which increased the overall combat effectiveness of the Wessex troops. An innovative approach to army recruitment allowed Alfred to maintain a balance of power with the mighty Danelaw. The king created a military machine capable of defending the interests of the state in the long term. The creation of his own fleet was another important achievement of Alfred the Great in the field of defense. He understood that in order to effectively fight the Vikings, it was necessary to control the coastal waters and intercept enemy ships. The king designed new types of ships that were larger and faster than traditional Scandinavian drakers. Justice became more centralized and predictable, which helped to strengthen the authority of the state. Fair and understandable legislation increased the population's trust in the royal power. This legal foundation ensured internal stability and order in the country for many years. Alfred's diplomatic efforts extended far beyond the British Isles. He maintained active relations with the rulers of continental Europe and the papacy in Rome. The exchange of embassies and gifts strengthened Wessex's international prestige and secured political support. Alfred integrated his kingdom into the wider European political context, bringing it out of isolation. His authority was recognized far beyond England, making him one of the most influential monarchs of the era. Diplomacy became an important tool for ensuring the security and development of his state. Alfred's personal qualities, his resilience in times of failure, and his generosity towards defeated enemies earned him a unique reputation. He was not only a skilled military leader, but also a wise philosopher and a deeply religious man. His life became an example of service to his people and a willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for the common good. The historical chronicles of the time are full of admiration for his intellect, fairness, and unwavering will. The image of Alfred the Great has become a symbol of the ideal ruler in English historical tradition. The legacy of King Alfred the Great lives on in every aspect of modern British statehood. His ideas about law, defense, and the importance of education remain relevant today. The Battle of Edington was only the beginning of his great journey to transform his country. This historical episode demonstrates how the will of one man can change the fate of an entire nation. The Battle of Edington is rightly considered one of the most decisive battles in the history of the European continent. It not only stopped the advance of the Viking army, but also reversed the entire course of Scandinavian expansion in Britain. If King Alfred's troops had been defeated, Anglo-Saxon culture could have disappeared forever under the pressure of the conquerors. Wessex remained the last barrier preventing England from becoming a colony of the northern peoples. Success in this clash allowed the unique identity and independence of the island's indigenous population to be preserved. The historical significance of this event goes far beyond that of an ordinary medieval military conflict. The battle demonstrated the effectiveness of traditional tactics of dense infantry formations against mobile and aggressive enemy troops. A wall of shields, skillfully deployed in suitable terrain, proved to be an insurmountable obstacle to the individual prowess of the Vikings. This victory strengthened the Anglo-Saxons' faith in their military traditions and enhanced the authority of the militia. The political outcome of the battle was the recognition of the equality of forces between Wessex and the Scandinavian settlers. The treaty that followed the battle cemented the legitimacy of Guthrum's authority, but limited his ambitions to the eastern territories. This created a unique system of geopolitical checks and balances on the island, ensuring decades of relative stability. The balance of power allowed both peoples to focus on internal development rather than endless warfare. Edington became the point of equilibrium around which Britain's new political reality began to take shape. For Alfred himself, this victory was a moment of absolute triumph and confirmation of his leadership qualities. He was able to regain the trust of his people after the catastrophic defeats of early 878. His ability to rule the state from exile and organize a counteroffensive commands deep respect from historians. Edington cemented his status as the undisputed leader of the nation, whose orders were obeyed without question. The king's authority became the main unifying factor for the entire Anglo-Saxon society during the period of recovery. The long-term consequences of the formation of Danelaw, which resulted from this battle, proved to be surprisingly constructive. The interaction of the two cultures led to the economic and social enrichment of the region, stimulating the development of trade and crafts. The Scandinavian influence made English society more dynamic and open to outside contacts. Over time, the descendants of the Vikings came to consider England their only homeland, fully integrating into local society. Paradoxically, the Battle of Edington laid the foundations for the future unification of these peoples. Modern historical science continues to study the details of this campaign, analyzing the strategy and tactics of both sides. Archaeological finds and landscape analysis help to more accurately reconstruct the course of the battle and the movements of troops. Each new fact adds to the picture of this grand clash, confirming its enormous impact on the course of history. Researchers are unanimous in their assessment of the Battle of Edington as a key moment in the formation of England. This event remains a subject of deep interest and respect on the part of the academic community. In summary, it can be said that Alfred the Great did not simply win a battle, he won the future for his country. His actions in the marshes of Athelney and on the battlefield at Edington changed the course of development for an entire region. Without this victory, the political, cultural, and linguistic map of modern Britain would look completely different. The legacy of this battle lives on in every aspect of English history, reminding us of the importance of determination and strategic vision. Edington will forever be remembered as the place where a handful of determined people saved an entire civilization. This story teaches us that even in the most hopeless situation, the right strategy and unity can work miracles.